What's a real-life glitch you've experienced that you still can't explain? Redditor 3, dreamt I was on a train which crashed. The guy in front of me was decapitated, the train car caught on fire before plunging off a bridge into water. I drowned. Woke up in a panic, realized I wasn't dead and fell back asleep. Had the exact same dream. And again. And again. Next day, dragging my tired butt into work wondering why my mind decided to play a dream like a bad VCR, I passed the volunteer desk at work with its daily pile of newspapers. The evening before, a train had crashed before plunging off a bridge into a river. Later it came out the crash produced some horrific injuries including decapitation. Edit to add, I was a very, very broke young adult and did not own a TV until a few years after this dream. Redditor 4, this is a repost then again, it fits. I'm not the kind of person to have a great many friends, but those friends I do keep are sacred to me. So one evening I was getting out of a Rotterdam subway block to go to my apartment near there, when I see an old friend, one I haven't seen in the flesh in a few years, heading into the subway. I call out his name, he turns, waves and makes this call me gesture, then the doors close and the subway rides off. 30 seconds later, my phone rings. It was my friend, who told me he'd just seen me get in the normal train he'd used to get home from the bar. Apparently, I had grinned, waved, gestured call me, the door shut and the train drove off. I lived in Rotterdam. He lived in Enschede. That's just over 200 kilometers apart. Or about 125 miles. Redditor 5, I've posted this one before. This happened about 6 years ago. Myself and 3 other friends went to a concert at the biggest venue in Mexico City. One of my friends is a woman. This is important for the story. So, the concert ended and we agreed on a meetup point outside the venue so we could pick a cab and leave together. There were about 100k people there, so we inevitably got separated, so we went to the meetup point. We waited for my friend for about 15 minutes when we started to get worried, so we started calling her phone. However, due to the sheer amount of people present at the venue trying to make phone calls, the lines get congested and the calls won't go out or they won't be received, so we started to get really worried. After another 10 minutes trying to call her, I get a phone call from her. She sounded extremely gloomy and sad. She said, "Hey Sabasviju, I'm alright, I'm already at my place, everything is okay." I got immediately freaked out as this was impossible. She lived 2 hours away and not even an hour had gone by. We get super freaked out and try to call her and start flagging some cops down, cause being Mexico City I thought she had been kidnapped. Then, 30 seconds after the call she comes out of the crowd looking as chilled as she could possibly look. I yell at her, telling her what the heck was wrong with her, etc. etc. The thing is, she looked so surprised at this. She denies having made any phone calls. She tried, but couldn't get a signal. We don't believe her, so we look at her phone and there was no record of the call having been made. After this I take my phone to show her the call and there was no record of the call having been received either. To this day I have no idea what happened, because the voice on the other end of the phone was hers, and she knew details about me and my name. Edit, many of you are suggesting I was high AF and hallucinated this. None of us took drugs that concert. We only had 1 or 2 overpriced beers. Redditor 6, a classic summer thunderstorm was fast approaching. It was super windy out but not yet raining. I've always been fascinated by weather, so I went outside and sat in a lawn chair. I was sitting in the middle of my yard, a good 10 feet from anything, when I was pelted in the face with a crouton. It was gusty, but not at the moment I was struck. I took it inside to show my family and no one cared. I never came up with a reasonable explanation. Redditor 7, when I was about 6 or 7, my cat died. It was the first time I experienced death and it really shook me up. Then, about a month later, I saw my cat walk into my room clear as day. I wasn't freaked out and I didn't question it. I reached down to pet him and suddenly he was gone. This happened a few more times until we got 2 new cats. Each time it happened, the fact he was dead never crossed my mind. Redditor 8, so a long time ago I was fed up with life and stepped off a curb in front of a dump truck. Turned, looked at the grill of the truck, closed my eyes, opened them to the truck passing me by and me back up on the curb. Still don't understand it and I don't know if I want to. Redditor 9, in high school I did archery, and one day at shooting practice one of the new kids shot a bullseye exactly. Dead center. This isn't that remarkable. You fire enough arrows, sooner or later one of them will be a bullseye. But everyone was being nice and congratulating him. Suddenly, a voice in my head, which sounded like me, but didn't feel like me, said, "Yeah, but Lynn's about to do the same thing." And I could see in my mind's eye, Lynn firing an arrow, it flying through the air and hitting a dead center bullseye. Then, maybe 3 or 4 seconds later, I watch as Lynn fires an arrow and it flies in exactly the trajectory I had seen in my head, and lands with a thwack, bullseye. Everyone is over congratulating Lynn now. She was new too, and I'm standing off to the side wondering what the duck just happened. It happened one more time a month or two later too. I saw something happen in my head exactly as it did a few seconds later. I've forgotten the details of the second time though, and it's never happened since. Redditor 10, my mom told me this. In my parents' bedroom was this really large master closet. It was technically just one closet, but it had 2 doors going into it. Between the 2 doors was a high shelf and a hanging rod for clothes. So it functioned like 2 separate walk-in closets, but you could walk from one to the other by ducking under any clothes hung in the middle. One night she was in her side of the closet and she saw through the gap between the shelf and the clothes rod my dad walk into his side of the closet. She heard the metal coat hangers sliding as he looked for something to wear and saw the clothes in the middle sway as they were brushed from the other side. From her side of the closet she started talking to him about something random. Then she heard the bathroom door open. She poked her head out of the closet to see my dad clearly just emerging from the shower. Walked to look into his side of the closet and, nothing. And up until the moment she poked her head out to look at the bathroom door, she will swear to you she could still see my dad in that closet. Redditor 11, I put my untangled earphones in my pocket and when I took them out again, they were untangled. Redditor 12, as a kid, shot a rubber band off my fingers at a soccer goal. Rubber band, unbroken, was looped around one of the strings of the soccer goal. Absolutely no clue how that happened. Redditor 13, it was unexplained for a little bit, but it was freaky and as far as I know, an actual glitch. I was driving home from, I think, the bookstore and suddenly realized the street signs were missing letters. Like a stop sign would read STP. Then other things I saw began missing parts, but without any space for the missing stuff to be in, like if reality was a piece of paper that was being folded to hide things. I managed to drive home like this, barely keeping myself from freaking out. Got home and things got back to normal. Then the worst headache of my entire life hit me. Yep, my first migraine ever, of luckily only 2 so far, with years apart. I'd heard people talk about migraine symptoms, like colors and blinking lights and smudges that impair your vision a little, stuff like that. Nobody had ever mentioned a symptom could be reality fucking warping around you. Redditor 14, girlfriend and I were talking on her front lawn. Mid-sentence, I felt something, evil, to my left. I stopped talking and turned. She did too. Saw some sort of shadowy humanoid around 30 feet away. Light was enough that it was obviously not a person. She asked, "Do you see that?" She didn't know why I stopped talking. I nodded. Without another word we both ran inside. No idea what it was. I would call it a trick of the light, but it was out of my vision when I originally got that feeling. Redditor 15, I forgot about this until I read this post, but it's something I still don't understand. It was summer, and my grandfather, grandmother, mom and I were working in the garden. It's pretty big and there is a lot of grass to be mowed and stuff like that. After all the work my mom would always ask me to get some soda, because everyone was thirsty from working. It was in the evening, but still pretty warm. After everyone had their soda, my mom asked me to put it back in the fridge, which was in the basement used as a living area, only a small part of storage. So I go to the basement, and please note, the room with the fridge is like 20-30 seconds from the exit, and you have to pass 2 doors with those flappy anti-fly curtains. I put the soda in the fridge, close the fridge and walk out. Seems normal, right? Except I had to do this 3 times. The soda kept reappearing whenever I put it in the fridge and turned my back on it. Everyone was outside, and there was only one bottle of soda in the room. To this day, I am still confused over what happened. There have probably been more moments like this, but this is the one I remember the most. Edit, TL, Doctor, my soda kept reappearing after I kept putting it in the fridge 3 times. Redditor 16, my friend and I were once outside when he was changing his girlfriend's car battery. It was at night and there was a lot of fog out. Suddenly, there was a flash of white light in his neighborhood for like half a second. It couldn't have come from a porch light or something. Everything was engulfed by the light. We looked around and didn't see anything that could have caused it. There were no cars, none of his neighbors had turned on any lights, nothing. To this day, we still believe a Terminator was sent back in time to his neighborhood. Redditor 17, one morning I woke up, rolled out of bed, brushed, had breakfast as usual, and then went about my day off. I lounged around the house a little bit, played my DS for a bit. Plinked away on my guitar. A lazy morning. Suddenly I'm driving in my car a couple towns over on my way to the BN. I pulled over and tried to collect my thoughts. I remembered waking up and getting ready, watering plants, cleaning my stuff up in the living room, then hopping in my car. But I also remembered doing all of the stuff from that other version of that morning. So I had 2 separate days that suddenly merged into one and kept both memories? Redditor 18, my brother got shot in the stomach and the bullet bounced off and fell on the ground. Apparently it had traveled a long distance and lost a lot of velocity. It left a welt, but that was it. Redditor 19, well I've posted this before but I'll post it again. Basically, it felt like I stepped back in time. I was walking on the sidewalk along a busy road when suddenly with a step, the whole damn world changed around me. It was a crazy hot day but suddenly it was cool and cloudy, there were only a few cars on the road and lots of people riding bicycles. I remember seeing a girl in a blue dress out of the corner of my eye. It was so surreal, but with the next step I was back in the usual reality and to this day I have no idea what happened. Redditor 20, I once woke up sitting on top of football goalposts, no clue how I got there. It was about 6 a.m. and there was a girl running around the track that surrounded the football field. Always wondered what she thought I was doing up there. Must have been weird creepy for her but she clearly was confident enough to continue her run. Redditor 21, woke up one day and started randomly having panic attacks after 30 plus years of healthy, normal living. Redditor 22, this happened to me about a month ago. For those who don't want to read the full story, basically, my coworker and I, on separate occasions found notes that had been written then erased on our desks, that had phrases that we had previously texted. Neither of us wrote the notes. We have no explanation. Redditor 23, once when running a route neighborhood I'd run 100 times I went to cross a street and suddenly lost all sense of direction. I slowly stopped and tried to orient myself with street signs and landmarks. But nothing made sense. I know it sounds like dementia. But I was only in my 30s and had never experienced it before or since. It was as if the Matrix reloaded and I was pointed in a different direction than before the reload, but my body still remembered the direction I was going. Redditor 24, back when I was sharing a shitty flat with my best mate we scraped together enough poo change for a 6-pack. In the morning I came out and there were 6 empties on the coffee table and 1 mystery beer still in the fridge. It was our magic beer. But one day I forgot it was magic and drank it. The end. Redditor 25, one time during a run I had an out-of-body experience. I was just running along, and then I blinked and I was seeing everything as if I was standing over my own shoulder. I could see the back of my head, and all around me but my head wasn't moving. It was just super weird. Redditor 26, our mattress did not have those little rope handles on. It absolutely did not. As of last week, while I was stripping the sheets and putting on fresh ones, it does. I'm too afraid to check again. Redditor 27, when I was about 13-14, I went on a trip to another state with my church youth group. We drove through the country for hours in a region I had never been to before. Eventually we ended up in a small town. I was looking out the window and realized I knew this town as if I had lived there before. I knew the post office would be a few blocks ahead on the right, and then sure enough there it was. Weirder, I knew what the buildings would look like. I predicted the location of all the landmarks in the town before we were close enough to see them, and all of the predictions were correct. It was very spooky and got the other kids on the bus a little riled up. Redditor 28, years ago I was driving home late from work, and as I was waiting at an intersection my whole car jerked violently to the right. It actually lifted off the ground and sent my drink flying. I looked up and saw the light was green, so I restarted the car manual transmission. It stalled and started to go through and pull over to check for damage. At that moment a drunk woman in an SUV ran the red light and smashed into a power transformer. If whatever happened to me hadn't, I would have been T-boned on my driver door. I called 911 and stayed to give my statement, but I think the woman died as the ambulance did not have sirens on when it left. Redditor 29, I swear I've witnessed framerate lag. Edit, I was completely sober. Redditor 30, I once bought 3 rotisserie chickens on clearance, $2 each. I picked at one of them on the drive home. Get home, lock my car for once, I rarely lock it. I have 2 chickens with me, and a pizza, and I was too lazy to grab the 3rd chicken. It was like 10 degrees outside, I wasn't worried about spoilage. Figured I'd grab it in the morning. I know for sure I left the chicken on the floor of my car in front of the passenger seat, yet the next morning, it was gone. Vanished. No sign of it anywhere. Where did my chicken go? Redditor 31, I drove nearly 14 miles on autopilot. Like cross-eyed zoned the duck out in thought and didn't once veer off the road. Also, a friend of mine managed to phase through a locked door and had to knock on it till his dad woke up and let him in. It was a sliding door with a trigger latch, no way to lock it and go outside. Redditor 32, I had left my cell phone. This was 2006, so it was an LG flip phone on the charger when I went to work. After an 8-hour shift I got home and grabbed it. There was a voicemail from an unknown number. I listened to it and it was a man saying he had just received a call from my number and wanted to make sure it wasn't someone he knew that needed something. I checked the call log and sure enough at 2 p.m., about 3 hours before I was home, my phone called a number. I called him back and asked if someone said anything. At this point I was convinced someone broke in. He said he could hear someone talking in the background, but it wasn't something he could understand. That's why he called back. I never figured out if it was a polite intruder using my phone without stealing anything or something more spiritual. I'm not a believer in ghosts, but quite a few unexplainable things happened in that house. Redditor 33, I was in college and home for break or some holiday. My dad was out at the grocery store picking up several last-minute items while my mom is wrapping up her beauty routine. I'm ready to go, sitting at our kitchen table scrolling through my phone. To set the scene, my position at our kitchen table looks out the back door down the steps to our driveway with garages in the basement. I hear a rumbling below me in the garage and think I must have missed my dad pulling in. I finish up my phone browsing and hear grocery bags crinkling behind me down the basement stairs, so I get up and start heading down to help him unload, and as I turn the corner there is no movement, no sound, and no grocery bags sitting by the door waiting to be carried upstairs. So I go open the garage door and his side is empty. I just closed the door and headed back to my seat at the table. As I sit back down, my dad's truck whips in the driveway and starts backing towards the garage. I wait, hear the grocery bags, and head downstairs. Hey Dad, need some help? Redditor 34, when I was young I was lying on my bed in the dark when I heard my cat meowing at the door. This was not unusual, as she often wanted in to sleep with me. I opened the door and saw the shadow of my cat enter the room, then she just stood by the door, still meowing. This was not usual. I reached out to scoop her up and just hit wall. My cat was outside the whole time. I don't believe in ghosts and I definitely wasn't asleep, so I don't know what the heck happened. That was the only time I experienced anything like that. Redditor 35, a friend of mine, that I hadn't spoken to in a while, and I booked the exact same resort at the exact same time on the other side of the world, Florida, without even knowing the other one was planning to go on a trip. Redditor 36, when I was young, maybe 7, after my mom got a divorce from my dad, we lived in this creepy apartment. I think kids have a sense about creepy shit, and I think I knew from the start that something was off about this apartment. Little backstory, and probably part of why it always creeped me out, my mom got a really good deal on it because she agreed to fix it up a little. Nothing crazy, Just basically cleaning out the stuff the old tenant had left and slapping some fresh paint on the walls. The previous tenant had vanished one day. The owner said that rent time came and went and the tenant never paid, so after calling numerous times they finally went into the apartment and the tenant was gone, but left all of their stuff. So the way this apartment was set up, when you entered the front door, a stairway was immediately to your left, a door to a bedroom immediately to your right, and then straight ahead was a hallway with an open living room and kitchen at the end. So if you're standing in the doorway, you can see into the bedroom, up the stairs, and into the living room. Once you enter the living room, you can see the full kitchen. One day, I was playing a computer game in the downstairs bedroom and started to get hungry. I walked out of the bedroom, calling for my mom as I walked down the hallway. No answer. When I rounded the corner into the kitchen, she wasn't there. I went back down the hallway and started up the stairs, but as I was about halfway up I felt a really creepy feeling and decided to go back down the stairs, all the while, still calling for her. At the bottom of the stairs, I opened the front door and called for her with no response, went back down the hall to open the sliding glass back door. This was an apartment complex so we had no backyard, just a little deck, and nothing. Panicking, I went back down the hall towards the original bedroom I was in, trying to figure out what to do. I decided to grab the phone to call someone, walked back down the hall to get it, and there stands my mother, cooking dinner in the kitchen. When I asked her where she'd been, she said she'd been there the whole time. I asked why she didn't answer when I was calling for her or if she saw me opening the back door and she said no. It's been probably about 15 or so years and I still think about this incident periodically. That apartment was creepy as fuck. Like the day we moved out we found this hidden room type thing disguised by a vent cover that we'd never seen in the 2 years we lived there. I had recurring nightmares of the same man, and there were a few times our front door either wouldn't lock or we'd get up in the morning to it standing open. So glad we didn't live there for longer than we had to. Redditor 37. I was around 7 years old running through the backyard at a friend's house. Around my neck was a cloth cord and hanging from it was a bronze stamped medallion that I had gotten at a recent Renaissance fair. As I was running, I tripped like the klutz I was and fell forward, the necklace and medallion flying off my neck and landing a few feet in front of me. I started to get up and looked at the necklace but then froze. It was sinking into the ground. The metal part was swallowed first and the rest of the cord with it. I was so shocked I couldn't move. I was able to snap out of it and lunge forward grasping at the last piece of the cloth before it was pulled under. I sat staring and poking at the ground for a good 10 minutes after that. It was completely solid. I never saw it again and have no idea what happened. Redditor 38. I traveled back to my hometown to visit relatives. On second day back, I went to bed, blinked, and suddenly it was daylight. Apparently I had slept an entire 36 hours, but my relatives remembered me doing various activities, washing dishes, eating dinner, shopping, etc., though nobody actually saw me around. Redditor 39. I had a dream where I was watching my brother play video games and saw him parachute out of a jet in BF4 then smack into a wall and die on impact. The next night my brother was playing BF4, jumped out of the jet, pulled his parachute, hit the wall and died. Except before he pulled his parachute I instinctively blurted out that the wall was going to kill him seconds before he came close to the ground. He still brings up that weird circumstance. Redditor 40. Two come to mind. The first is on occasion I'll have dreams of events that later happen exactly as they did in the dream. Normally it's nothing major, just a conversation that goes exactly how it did in the dream or something similar. The other was much worse, which is I ate a pot brownie that contained bath salts. I was unaware of this fact. While I wouldn't call it a glitch, reality did break for me for about 12 hours and I was convinced I was in heck for a while. Redditor 41. I was meeting someone at the train station from Craigslist to buy my old phone for $200. He let me know when he was going to arrive and what he would be wearing. I got there, saw a guy that matched the description and showed him the phone. He took a look, gave me $200 and went on his way. As I started walking back home, I got a phone call from the original buyer telling me he just got to the train station and was looking for me. I had no idea what to say. Who the duck did I sell my phone to? Redditor 42. Music was on shuffle for around 5,000 plus songs, and the same songs I listened to on a drive to a place played in reverse order on the way back. Redditor 43. When I was about 11 years old, I was playing with my younger sister and two friends at the bottom of their garden. It was a semi-rural area and there was a cow field that stretched away for about a mile, and then there was a motorway. There was no visual change in our surroundings, yet suddenly the cow stopped making any sound at all and we couldn't hear the traffic on the motorway, which was usually constant. We all froze as we sensed something. The air felt heavy as if it was pushing down on us, and we all felt a prickly heat on any exposed skin. It lasted a good 10 seconds and then stopped as fast as it had started. The cows went crazy and the traffic sounds returned. We all agreed we felt it. I wonder what strange weather systems were at play that day. Redditor 44. Once in college, some friends and I drove out of the city and down a country road in a secluded area so we could smoke pot and cruise around. Didn't really have a secure place to smoke near campus, and we were dumb enough to think it was safer in a moving vehicle. So after nightfall, we are on our way headed back to town, and it seems out of nowhere we are in this massive traffic jam on this country road. There are tons of cars in front of us and even cars trying to pass on the shoulder. Cars were racing past going the other way, which really didn't lead anywhere. There just seemed to be a kind of pandemonium, like we were driving around a sports stadium after a game. There were no lights from a police car or fire truck. No evidence of a crash. Nothing. We were literally screaming because it was so weird. It all came out of nowhere. It was a 2-lane road that didn't lead to anywhere, yet there were tons of cars jammed up. Then it just seemed like all the cars were gone. The traffic let up and we were cruising along again, but I don't remember seeing cars in front of us or behind anymore. It was like we were alone on the road. We lost it and couldn't stop talking about it for like a week. I'd like to say it was a glitch, but it's probably because we were smoking some good stuff. Redditor 45. I'm literally just going to copy and paste part of another one of my comments here, because it's the most inexplicable of my stories. Other notable stories are very similar but feature a very large neon-colored broom and popcorn not in the same story. Story: one day, I was driving with my son 3 and daughter infant. Son was in a car seat, all the way in the back of my van. Daughter was in the middle. I know my son had boots on, because there was no snow on the ground, so I tried to put his shoes on and he screamed bloody murder until he got boots. We went directly to the van. When we got to our destination, a grocery store less than 10 minutes away, he no longer had boots on. Now, keep in mind that the windows in the back of my van don't open at all. Neither do the windows in the middle. Only the ones in the front, and since it was winter I definitely didn't open those. After a quick search in the parking lot with no results, we obviously had to go back home because he couldn't walk around the store in socks. When we got back home, I searched the car properly. After about 20 minutes, it wasn't even about managing to get to the grocery store. It was the principle of the thing. I was going to find those goddamn boots. I removed car seats and entire seats from the van. I searched every possible space I could access, let alone my strapped-in 3-year-old. I even searched everywhere in between the spot I put his boots on and the car. I never found those goddamn fucking boots. Redditor 46. My mom came home from work once and saw me walk out of my room. She called out to me and I didn't answer. I didn't answer because I was at my friend's house. Redditor 47. This is a small one, but I bought a new TV. The next day, one of the lunch ladies at my high school, who knew me by name, asked, "How are you enjoying your new TV?" I replied that it was pretty nice and went on like normal. Only an hour later did I realize that she mentioned the TV I just bought the day before. I felt some Truman Show-esque vibes. I asked her how she knew the next day and she didn't seem to know what I meant. Pretty sure my grandma told her about it and she just mentioned it for some small talk, but it screwed me up for the full day. Redditor 48. A friend of mine and I used to joke about how our backpacks had black holes, which was why we could all our stuff in it. A good while into this, we found each other's stuff in our backpacks. This happened multiple times, too. After it kept happening, we reasoned out that it was most likely that we were dropping our stuff into the other's backpack without noticing, but the chances of that were lower than the frequency at which it was happening. What really screamed at me that something was wrong was when 3 of his pens in his pen collection ended up not in my backpack, but in the pocket of my jacket weeks after he lost them. I like to think that whenever we come to agree upon something, it'll happen, which is why I'm glad we both also joke about and discuss becoming gods and our plans when we do. Unfortunately, these occurrences have ceased lately, so I guess the magic has worn. Redditor 49, I had an abusive childhood. One time, in middle school, I had a friend over, a very rare occurrence for me. My friend and I were about to enter the house and go up to my room. Now the door we were going through connected to the laundry room, which has the washer dryer like right in front of the door, so if you are doing laundry, sometimes the door will hit you. I had a premonition. Nothing else to call it. I put my hand on the door handle and then a premonition of the exact words and way my stepmother would scream at me the moment I opened the door. I turned to my friend and said, when I open this door, my mom will be there, and she will be very upset. He looked super confused, but sure enough, I opened the door and she yelled and screamed at me exactly the way I saw, and then we both ran up to my room. I don't believe in the supernatural, religion, the occult, ghosts, or anything like that at all. But anytime I start to get 100% atheistic neckbeard in my own head, I remember that and it makes me think. It's not bulletproof because she had yelled at me for that several times, but I'll never forget the absolute certainty I had at that moment of what exactly was about to happen. I've never been more certain of anything in my life since. Weirded my friend out too. Redditor 50, I had a weird one recently, where it felt as if I had slightly time traveled. I was watching an interview on YouTube of a politician. It was on an issue I had very little knowledge on by a person I had no prior knowledge of. Then during the interview it kind of started again. Where the video I was watching went back in time by about 2 minutes. I was watching this, I felt, wow, I've heard all this before. Then I assumed it was an intense déjà vu. But then I passed the video and word for word repeated everything he was about to say next. I checked the timeline of the video, and I had not rewound it or seen it again. I rewound the same video to see if the footage had just been looped or something. But it hadn't. It was as if I quickly peered into the future to see the video, then watched it again. It was really strange. Redditor 51, depends, would you consider a paranormal experience a glitch in the programming or an Easter egg hidden by the programmers? Redditor 52, went out of state to a casino with my family. The casino had 2 floors, it kind of looked like a mall, you could see the top floor just by looking up and you got to the top floor by using an escalator. The bathroom was on the top floor and my mom went to the bathroom alone. She was gone for about 15 minutes before I went looking for her. I checked the restroom and she wasn't in there. The rest of my family, 5 people, spread out to look for her and met back by the escalator and no one could find her. I was holding her phone for her so I couldn't call her. I saw a suspicious looking man standing by the ladies' room the entire time we were looking and I thought maybe he killed her and stuffed her in the trash, or maybe he killed her in the men's room. I am irrational when I'm in panic mode, so I checked there too. Finally, after another few minutes, my mom comes down the escalator looking zoned out. I was so relieved to see her. She was tripping out because she said she took the escalator and it took her to another building across the street and then back to where we were, even though she got on the right escalator. I swear there was only 2, one going up, and another going down. The crazy part was that the buildings weren't even connected at all. Redditor 53, when I used to do acid, it would leak into electronics. I don't mean I pressed wrong buttons or I was just too out of it to make it work. I mean half of my phone screen would glitch out for a few seconds, then just crash. If I was playing a video game, the level wouldn't load and an error screen in Japanese would come up and stay there until it was rebooted. It got so frequent that my friends wouldn't let me near any of their DJ equipment, nor was I allowed to go anywhere near the sound system at parties in college. Redditor 54, my house called me. I left my office for a birthday dinner, came back around 8 p.m. to pick up flowers. My direct dial office phone was ringing. Caller ID identified it as my own house, in which I lived alone. My then boyfriend saw the number on the phone too. Picked up the phone, nothing. Raced home, alarm still set, cat sound asleep. It was a house built in 1927 and had a friendly ghost. Oh, and I'm sure it was a lady ghost put out a place setting for me overnight once. She used butcher knives instead of a fork and knife, but they were mostly in the right place. True story. Redditor 55. Mine's not as crazy as a lot of the others here, but when I was young my sister and I launched Polly Pockets from the top of our ceiling fan. Once, one of them flew off and hit the wall above a door. I went over to retrieve it. Gone. What was even more weird was that there was a chip of paint that came off the wall where the Polly Pocket hit, but no trace of the darn Polly Pocket. A few months back, I was going through old storage. At the bottom of the plastic bin was the same Polly Pocket, or at least very darn similar. Weird how the world ducks with us. Redditor 56. Someone needs to get a patch out that fixes sneezing when I go from dark to light. Redditor 57. I dream about places I have never visited, and then proceed to accidentally arrive at those places within a couple weeks. The first couple times it happened, I wrote it off as a fluke, and that I had just not remembered being in those places before. Then it started happening in places that there was no conceivable possibility of me ever visiting. It has gotten to the point to where I am calling my parents and asking if we ever visited obscure locations when I was a child. Redditor 58. How I can remember so many things from my past but can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. Redditor 59. I haven't experienced it, but grand mal seizures seem to be the biggest glitch someone can experience. Redditor 60. I used to have these very vivid dreams that were all part of an overall story. They took place in an alternate universe with magic and demons and shit. Myself and some friends, these people weren't real, mind you, were freedom fighters in the war. The dreams were never in order and I wrote them down after waking up, figuring out where they placed on the timeline by taking note of particular details. For instance, in some of the dreams I was always alone and was incredibly powerful. In others I was pretty much just an average kid and had all those friends around me as we snuck around trying to rescue pals. One night I had particularly dark dream where one of my friends, his name was Luke, was sitting on a rooftop threatening to jump. I went up there to try and talk him out of it and we ended up having a long conversation about how he couldn't see the point in fighting anymore now that she's dead. So this was pretty surprising. The she that was being referred to was his girlfriend Maddie. In the later dreams in the timeline she was never there, so this sort of explained why she disappeared from the dreams. That was in the Christmas break in 2009. When school started in 2010, I met Maddie for the first time when she started at my school. She looked exactly the same, had the same laugh, same mannerisms and everything. I definitely had never met her before and yet there she was. Not just alive, but actually fucking real. Update: people have inspired me to sort out my notes. I spent a lot of time updating them yesterday and clarifying things. It's turned into a really long document and I still have to transfer some things from the original handwritten journal, but it should be all complete in a couple days. Like I said, I'm surprised people are interested. Every other time I mentioned this on the net nobody paid any attention. I guess it was just the right timing and topic. Update 2, still working on it. I've fixed up everything that was written before and I'm now up to writing up everything from the photos I have of the original notes. I'll put in thoughts and context and stuff as I go. I think with all the pictures of the notes, my commentary and the actual retelling of the dreams, it's ended up at about 37 pages already. I don't have a huge amount left, maybe another 12 or so pages to go. Not being sarcastic with that, 12 pages won't take too long to write once I actually start doing it. Update 3, this isn't finished, but you can see most of it there. I got a bit sidetracked with uni and I'm not sure when I'll get back to it after all. Redditor 61, I'll be on the verge of falling asleep and I'll start hearing hospital noises and people speaking in hushed tones. Other times I hear this high-pitched blaring beep that seems to shoot through the entirety of my mind. Kinda convinced I'm a 90-year-old in the future who's in a coma dying while hooked up to some technology that lets me live in my past. Redditor 62, I went to this psychic with my mom for fun and we both got readings. It was interesting, but one weird thing really stuck out for its specificity. The psychic told my mom that my deceased grandpa was telling her to check the furnace. Weird and random. A little bit of time goes by and my mom has the furnace checked and serviced. The repair guy comes out and says, I can see you have a carbon monoxide detector, but you've had so much leaking out, I don't know how it didn't go off and how your cat isn't dead by now. No one in the house was experiencing any symptoms of exposure to it yet, thankfully. Carbon monoxide is odorless, so it's not like the psychiatrist could have smelled it on us, but thanks for saving our lives, lady. Redditor 63, in my hometown, there is a sign for a Masonic hall. It's the damnedest thing, but one day I decided to poke at it and see what I could see. I walked toward the sign from a block away, and found myself on the far end of the block. I turned, looked up at the sign, and walked toward it, checking the storefronts as I passed each one, and wound up at the end of the block again. I looked at each door, and found stores, but no Masons at least 3 times up and down the block. Later, I stood across the street, stood level with the sign, and crossed the street. This time I found the door, clearly labeled, to the Masons meeting place. Redditor 64, I'm late but here's hoping someone sees it. I was in my grandparents' van and felt something thunk on my head. I reach up and find a dime on top of my head. There was no where it could have come from. We were inside the van and the door was closed, and the visor was way in front of where I was. On top of that, my mom saw it fall out of the corner of her eye. All I can figure was I prayed for money and God thought that would be a funny way to fulfill the request. Redditor 65, I had a friend that lived on a farm which had all sorts of big farming-esque equipment on it. He said that one winter day he was riding a snowmobile and wasn't really paying attention to his surroundings. When he looked up going 20 miles per hour or so, there was a giant blade from one of the farm equipment that would have been right at neck level if riding a snowmobile. He said that there was no way he could have dodged it, so he just closed his eyes and assumed that was the end for him. When nothing happened, he opened his eyes and looked back to see the snowmobile tracks passing right where the blade was sticking out, but he was intact. Redditor 66, my mom, my brother, and I were driving home one night. We were talking and suddenly it seemed like we were a lot further along than we should have been. Either me or my brother said something and my mom looked at the clock. It had been 10 minutes since we'd left where we'd been baseball field and it should have taken us 30 plus minutes to get to where we were. None of us can explain it. Redditor 67, I posted this before. Was walking across an open parade ground on a military base and at one point I passed a couple people. With the people there was a small individual. This language matters. It was dressed in clothes that didn't make sense. I know it sounds weird, but that's the only way I can describe it. It was dressed as if it was trying to dress like a human, but wasn't really sure how that might look. As I passed it said in a kind of sing-songy way, "How are you doing?" I instantly got chills and kept walking. Being a huge skeptic though, reason grabbed me and I turned around to see what the heck just happened. The only thing I saw were the people standing there, the other thing was gone. No damn idea what the heck that was all about. Redditor 68, at work we had a girl fall and pass out. As we waited for emergency services we all figured out who it was quickly. I knew who it was and I knew the face and her and everything. Let's call her Ashley. Ashley is there getting help from the paramedics. I turned to my right to see my cashier. Ashley. Standing there. I freak out inside and quickly look back to the girl who fell, and her face had changed. It looked like another employee this time. Like a real-life body swap? I'll never get over that. Redditor 69, 6-year-old me playing make-believe Star Wars. In my imagination I was disarmed so I dropped the toy gun I had. Then I imagined that I used the Force to get the gun back, but the gun actually came back. I thought I was a Jedi for the next month. Redditor 70, I woke up from bed one morning and I had telescopic vision. I was able to see dust on my table, and micro scratches on my model figurines that were 10 feet away on the other side of the room. I blinked and my vision went back to normal. Redditor 71, turned around while a girl was behind me. The glitch part is that I couldn't see her. She was 3 feet away but for some reason I couldn't perceive her. Where she stood was just a black space for 3 seconds. Redditor 72, oh, I actually have something for this and it was pretty recent. 3 of us were talking at work. This is in a warehouse so we were in an open area. At the same time all 3 of us looked down at my right foot because all 3 of us heard something and I felt something. It felt like maybe a piece of paper slipped out of one of our hands and swished past my ankle. I was wearing shorts. That gentle, but definite. There was nothing there. No paper, none of us were holding paper anyway, no fly, no mouse, no anything. How did all three of us hear the same thing and I felt it, but there was nothing there? Redditor 73, flipped a coin into a fountain, overshot and the coin landed on a smooth concrete slab just past the pool of water. The coin then bounced back into the fountain, denying all physics. Sometimes these things in reality just break. Redditor 74, hallucinations when I wake up from a deep sleep. When my bedroom door is open, the pole at the top of the stair rail looks like a person, and sometimes it looks like my dog is laying on my bed when it's really just bunched up blankets. And also when it happens I'm pretty awake, and it won't disappear until I either look away or blink really hard. Redditor 75, I still weirdly remember this to this day. I was 7-8 years old watching the Mets in the playoffs and my mom said I had to go to bed. My dad asked me, "Who do you think is going to win?" The Mets were down but the game was close. I'm not sure why, but I said Robin Ventura is going to hit a grand slam to win the game. My dad was just like, "Okay, shut up." If anyone knows baseball, you'll know this is a lofty-ass prediction, very damn lofty. Next thing I know, my dad wakes me up at midnight and tells me the Mets won on a Robin Ventura grand slam. He was freaked the duck out and I couldn't sleep that night. My mom thought I was a psychic, which I don't think I am. I have no idea why I felt that was going to happen and it's one of the most memorable times of my childhood. Fucking weird. Redditor 76, I fell out of bed as a kid but witnessed the entire thing from a bird's eye view, looking down at myself wedged and crying between the bed and the wall. Redditor 77, sleep paralysis. Happened to me a couple times. Both were kind of terrifying. Redditor 78, trail running. I ran past an old lady walking her 2 dogs. We both said hi as I zoomed down the trail. About 10 minutes later I'm at my halfway and turn around. She was only 20 yards behind me. I don't know how she caught up. Redditor 79, a girl in my girlfriend's town posted a Facebook status where she basically asked why she kept having dreams that she was dying. 2 nights later she was found dead. Redditor 80, don't know if this qualifies but damn this will give me and everyone reading the chills. When you have deja vu in a dream. You have the dream and think it's a sequel from before. Then at the end of the dream you think about how many times whatever happened has happened, only to wake up and realize you have never experienced that dream. Please tell me someone relates. For some reason I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, but if you can't relate you should relate somewhat to having deja vu in a dream. Redditor 81, there's no way to prove this, but I truly believe my son 5 and I have a weird telepathic bond. Yes, we have a normal mother-son bond, but there's something else. I would say at least twice a week, he wakes up exactly as I'm falling asleep. I don't know how he knows, and every time it happens, I convince myself it's a fluke, but lo and behold, a few days later, it happens again. He doesn't fuss much, just calls out my name and most times doesn't even stay awake long enough to hear my response. Sometimes he'll even say just checking when I answer him. I could be silently reading or laying in bed for hours, but as soon as I doze off, he calls my name. I also know what he's thinking sometimes, almost like I can hear his thoughts in my head. I also have a daughter, and although she and I are very close, we don't have this thing. If I could put it into words, I almost feel like too much of me rubbed off when I was pregnant and he took some of me with him. It feels like we're twins. Sometimes he laughs at the same time I do, even when I'm laughing at something he's not privy to. It's super weird and a bit unnerving if I think about it too much. Maybe this is common with mothers but I've never heard of it. TLDR, I think my son and I can read each other's minds. Redditor 82, one time I was playing games with my buddy, I then suddenly heard a really loud scream. It sounded like it was right beside me. I asked my friend if he heard it. Nope, he replies, so I just shrugged it off. Maybe I was just hearing things. Until my grandma comes up to my room and asked if it was me that screamed. I said nope, and I was pretty freaked out for the rest of the night. Redditor 83, one time, myself and a friend of mine were driving down a residential road in our neighborhood. I swear to God, I saw ahead what looked exactly like an smaller sized upside down train, the train car that's always at the front, whatever that's called. And right after my friend said, "Did you just see that upside down train?" As soon as we actually drove past where it would have been, it was nothing. Just a bus stop sign. To this day, I still think it was a glitch in the Matrix. Redditor 84, I have 2 chargers for my phone. One day, I grab my charger in the morning, use it when I'm out, and when I'm home again it's not anywhere in my bag. I figure I lost it, but no big deal, I've got another. So for a week I use the new one. In this time period I clean my house and room several times, nothing interesting happens. About a week later, I go shopping and buy a new jacket. I come home, plug my phone in with the second charger I've been using for a week, put the new jacket on my bed and busy myself with a task. A few minutes later I turn around, and there's a phone charger lying on top of my brand new jacket that I bought that day. I turn to look at my phone, and it is plugged in. I completely freaked out internally. That charger that I lost over a week before, just appeared a week later. And not only that, but it appeared perfectly placed on a new item of clothing that was not even a few hours old. No idea how it got there, but now I have 2 chargers again. So that's cool. Redditor 85, when I was a kid I shared a room with my brother. We were in our beds and I was talking to him. It was around 9. My brother started snoring mid-sentence. I remember thinking it was weird, but when I looked at the clock it was past 2 a.m. The same kind of thing happened the next week when I was looking out of my bedroom door to watch the TV in the living room. Suddenly it was off. Again I looked at my clock and it was past 2 a.m. Redditor 86, I texted my friend that his zipper was open for shits and giggles. While he was preparing for a presentation. His zipper was actually open and he replied with a "Thank you bro, you saved me from a huge embarrassment." Redditor 87, when I was a kid, I was at the beach with my family. I had read some beach safety pamphlet thing in the car and it had said that if someone is stung by a jellyfish, you need to scrape the affected area with a credit card to get the barbs or similar thing out so they'll stop pumping venom into you. It was a somewhat crowded beach and I noticed a plastic shovel sticking out of the sand near us. It wasn't ours. I remember thinking that it would be a good substitute for a credit card if someone got stung. My little sister got stung when a jellyfish washed up onto her leg and I used the plastic shovel to scrape the stingers out. Another weirder one was one morning years later as I was headed to class, I heard whispering behind me. Loud and clear. I turned around and there wasn't anyone there. Schoolyard is normally empty. I looked at a loudspeaker, thinking it was malfunctioning, but the whispering sound was still behind me. I walked into the building and the whispers followed me. I figured I was hallucinating, but I was concerned because I have never had audio hallucinations before. The whispering kept going until a few minutes before first period started. It hasn't happened since. I still don't quite know what was happening. Redditor 88, I put my dirty clothes in a basket. In a day or two they return folded on my bed. It's been driving me crazy for over 20 years. Redditor 89, whenever my eyes just spaz out, it's like a camera bug or something. Redditor 90, about 4 years ago, maybe 5, I was on the bus and I swear to God like 3 people in the seats in front of me just vanished in between stops. Redditor 91, went to bed on a school night one day. Woke up and it was 10:30, sweet no school. I decoded to sleep in and woke up at 7:15 to get up for school, not the next day that same day. And I know the clock said 10:30, I checked my phone as well and it was light outside but it was dark again when I woke up at 7:15. Moral of the story? Don't sleep in or you'll time travel to a world line where you have to go to school. Redditor 92, alright I'm a little late but hopefully this gets seen. One night I was driving with 4 friends in my car. We were all sitting in silence and heard the meep meep sound from the road runner. At first we all questioned each other, it had to have been a ringtone. But everyone swore their phones didn't make the sound. The radio was off too. Middle of an empty road, middle of the night. We had no idea where the sound came from. Cue the laughter. I don't think I've laughed so hard in my life. I actually had to pull over because I was in tears. I still laugh when I think of the inexplicable meep meep. Redditor 93, will never understand this for as long as I live. In high school I liked to wake up early in the morning so I'd have time to eat breakfast, watch TV, maybe do some last-minute homework and relax before I'd begin my day. I always set my alarm at 6 a.m. So that morning as usual my phone alarm went off. I grabbed my phone to turn it off. I distinctly remember reading a text message from a friend who was an early riser like me asking me did I want to grab fried rice later that night with the rest of our friends. He sent this at 5:39 a.m. It was still September, so the sun was always up at this hour. I got out of bed and immediately hopped in the shower. When I got out I headed down to the kitchen to brew coffee and make some breakfast. While I was waiting on the coffee pot to heat up I ran back to my room to grab my phone. When I looked down at my phone I just about croaked. The time on the phone read 3:30 a.m. To make matters worse I looked outside and the sun wasn't even up yet. What's even weirder was I never had even received that text from my friend. I just sat there bewildered and frustrated, running through the chain of events from that morning over and over again. I eventually made my way back to the kitchen. Seeing that I was wide awake now I didn't need coffee anymore. I stayed up the rest of the morning not even trying to attempt sleep again. Later that morning something even stranger happened. At 5:39 a.m. I received the text message from my friend. I've spent a lot of time over the years trying to decipher the events from that morning. All I know is that somehow I woke up in the future and my shower took me back to the present. Can anyone relate to this? Redditor 94. When I was young my mom wanted to go to the mall. It had been snowing out a bit. I suddenly got this overwhelming feeling that we shouldn't go. I cried, begged her not to go. Threw a temper tantrum while she carried me out to the car. 10 minutes later we were swerving into oncoming traffic, into a field and missed a giant utility box by about 3 inches. Life is weird. Redditor 95. It just happened. I was in a music class and we were talking about film scores and the professor plays a bit from this movie. I've never seen this movie and an image of Arnold Schwarzenegger and sci-fi come into my head and then I correctly guessed Total Recall. I have never seen that movie let alone listened to the soundtrack. Redditor 96. I was in my early teens, reading something in my room. I was propped on my bed by pillows, the bed being on the opposite corner of the door and myself facing my window. For reference's sake, we'll say the door was on the western wall's northwest corner, the bed along the southern wall and touching the southeast corner, and my window which I was looking at the eastern wall. So I was reading, with the door open, when suddenly my dad walks in, holding some papers and about to tell me something. I see him from the corner of my eye, look up and he's not there. I distinctly recall what he wore, that he was holding papers, hell. I even heard the papers rustle. But he was just not there. Turns out that neither of my parents were even home at that time. They were out shopping and I hadn't even noticed. Redditor 97. Not a glitch purse, but there have been several times where I have gotten up out of nowhere in the middle of the night and opened the front door to one of my roommates standing there either about to open it or call me because they forgot their key. It's really weird and it feels like I'm in a dreamlike state until I come face to face with them and they ask me how I knew they needed to get inside and I have no answer for them. Redditor 98. It's pretty lame, but when I was maybe 8 I was at my aunt's house. I looked at the living room carpet and it was a dark green color. The carpet had always been a light blue color. But I kept staring at it, blinking and rubbing my eyes and it was still green. Eventually it went back to its usual color. I have no idea what happened. Redditor 99. My neighbor died in a scuba diving accident. He had 2 kids and a wife. A few months later I saw him walk on the street. Never talked to him much or knew him well. I was just so confused. He was walking with a girl and a baby. Redditor 100. Was in my parents' loft in their old house. Sitting on the couch and I hear a female I think voice say Dad? I freaked out since I was home alone. I ran around, checked all the rooms and yelled to see if anybody was there. Nothing. That day is what made me know I would have daughters when I was older. I am now the father of 2 girls. Redditor 101. I have 2. One time both me and my sister were sitting in my living room and then all of a sudden she just freezes and asks me if she sees that black thing on the street. I said no and then I blinked and it was an experience I never want to feel again. The TV went silent, Everything around me went silent and all I could hear was my sister yelling that he's coming closer. I looked back on the street and sure enough there was a shadowy person walking towards us. Then everything stopped and went back to normal. One time I was at work, just counting money. We were required to listen to the local AM radio station which plays country music mostly and Twins games when they're on. I was counting money and all of a sudden Don't Worry Be Happy starts playing. I like this song so I start jamming to it while counting money. Then it plays again. I start getting a little skeptical but I roll with it. Then it plays again. And again. I contact one of my friends who works at the radio station and was like WTF. He was working at the time, he controls what gets played and he said that's not even on their playlist. Redditor 102, stupidly late to this but when I was younger I had a fantastic relationship with my paternal grandfather. From as early as I can remember to being 12-13 I would go to my grandparents' house every Friday or after nursery school or whatever and he would always drive me home about 10 minutes to my parents'. I loved the drives home, we'd often take longer routes, long cuts, to spend more time in the car. For the longest time he always had this one CD in the car, it was a Now That's What I Call Music or maybe a similar brand. One song that stood out was Cyndi Lauper Girls Just Wanna Have Fun. We loved that song so much, always had it playing once or twice on the drive home, and despite me being a pre-teen boy and he a old Yorkshireman, it became our favorite song. Fast forwards a few years, I'm 13 or 14 and on holiday abroad with my parents. We spent pretty much the entire time sat by the pool at the hotel which played the same music. This hotel had one playlist of songs, maybe 20-25 tracks long. We could always predict what the next song would be. It became a bit of a joke between the family that the music was so terrible. Whilst we're away, Granddad was taken into hospital. He'd not been a well man for as long as I can remember, and this would be the last time he went to hospital. When things got bad, my dad got the phone call to come home and see him before he passes, and he does just that. I stayed at the hotel for the rest of the holiday with my sister and mother, who shielded us well from what was going on, but we still knew. There was a specific phone call that my dad made to my mom via the hotel reception that I identified as being the one straight after my grandfather passed. I was sitting on a bench with my sister as my mother spoke. Then, the next song that played was of course, Girls Just Wanna Have Fun, not being part of the repeating playlist or ever being heard play in the last 7 days, there it was. After it ended the music went back to the shitty playlist. Never really shared this story before, it's what's led me to fully believe the universe is interactive and fluid and nothing is really real. The more I think about it the stranger it gets. That song also has a habit of creeping up at strange times too. Redditor 103, when I enter another room and I forgot what I wanted to do. Wonder when they'll fix that bug. Redditor 104, this morning coming into work. I remember walking in and holding my keycard in my hand, then suddenly I was almost to my seat. I don't remember a thing between that. I don't remember opening the door or using my card. It's like my mind just blanked out that time. Redditor 105, when I was in high school I would drive this tiny little cheap sports car from the 1970s. Every few years or so you would have to refill the tank. Nowadays, cars have a cord physically connecting the gas cap to the car so it just dangles off while you fill it, but this one didn't. You unscrewed it and put it on the back, then screw it back on when you're done. I was filling the car up one day, and then drove home. It was about a 10-minute drive from the gas station to my house. When I got home, I realized that I had left the gas cap on the back of the car, which was smooth and slanted downward, and that it had miraculously remained perched there for the entire trip without falling off, all the while sitting on a car that vibrated even when idling and was going at least 30 miles per hour with a healthy amount of turns and bumps. I still can't explain that one. Redditor 106, one summer at about 3 a.m., every dog in my neighborhood just started barking at the same time for about 15 seconds. I heard it echoing down every street. Out of nowhere they all just stopped at the same time and that was it. I even took a Snapchat video but I'm not sure if I saved it. Weird shit. Redditor 107, this literally just happened, but I was grabbing a Sharpie, and I have a whole set of fine tip markers, each a different color. So I grabbed the black one. I go to grab another marker, and I pull out one of the thicker ones, which is what I needed. With both markers still in my hand, I close the drawer full of supplies. But now, there are 2 fine tip markers in my hand. One of them had been a thick one, I swear on my life. So, freaked out, I go to grab another marker. I pull out another fine tip marker. I'm holding 3 black, fine tip Sharpies, wondering what the heck just happened. I'm not sure how I ended up with 3 of the same marker, but it was weird as shit. Redditor 108, late to the party, but, as a student I used to work at an airport, doing surveys. For this job I had to wear a suit and tie. I had been doing this work 2 days a week for 3 years. One day before work, somehow I couldn't manage to bow my tie. No matter how many times I tried. When I arrived at work I tried again a few times but I couldn't make it work. Someone had to do it for me. I had been bowing my tie for 3 years. Next time before work I tried it again and I did it in one time and all the times after that.